Welcome to the Teen Life Podcast, where we believe that teenagers are not a problem to be solved. We're here to help you equip teenagers through the power of connection. Hey guys, this is Chris Robey, and over across from me is Karlie Duke.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, so today we're going to talk about a topic that is it's really interesting because we hear about this a lot in our groups, and it's the topic of stealing, which we can't really incriminate ourselves. I don't know that I've really ever stolen anything before, like intentionally. Maybe, I don't know, but I do know this is a big topic, especially within teenagers. We talk about risk taking. We talk about behaviors that come with adolescence a lot, and stealing is one of those that you will see come across.
Yeah, definitely. I was just telling Chris, it's actually pretty hard to find stats on this, and probably because a lot of them don't get caught.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I was trying to think if I've ever stolen something. Maybe like as a little kid, I might have stolen something, and I remember that being a huge deal in my family. And then like every now and then I'll like get home. One time I got home and I had a spoon from a restaurant in my purse, and I was like, where did that come from? Like, how did that get? I'm sure I just like dropped it and it happened to fall in. Josh's like, I can't believe you stole that spoon. And I was like, I promise that was not intentional. But there's obviously a difference between like unintentionally taking something or walking out and not meaning to, and shoplifting.
I will say there have been times that I will walk out of a store and think, like, did I put something in my pocket? Because I mean, you think about walking around and just your hands are in and out of your pockets. You're looking at things like because around the house, I'll pick something up and put in my pocket and leave. And I've always worried about that, like because as I drift off so easy. I'm in my own head. I'm kind of wandering around. I'm like one of these days I'm gonna walk out with something and not even realize I did it.
Yeah.
Which is a great story, right?
Yeah. I will say when I was a teenager, and these are little, but still would be considered stealing and not okay. It was very cool to take Whataburger tent numbers, like, the little orange tents, especially if it was like your number for sports or whatever. People would take those a lot. And then remember Chili's used to have the like pot holders on their queso that had like the chili peppers on them.
Yeah.
And that was a thing that I don't think I had one, but I had friends that would take those and then put them on like their gear shifts in their car.
Wow.
And they would like just because it was an easy thing to stick in your pocket, stick in your purse, stick in your bag. And so, like I said,
and that's why you don't see them anymore now. That's why.
Exactly. You don't see them because that was a thing for a little while, at least around me. But shoplifting remains one of the most frequent crimes committed by adults and teenagers. And I did find one stat that said 1 in 4 youth admit to having shoplifted between the ages of 12 to 16.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so about 25%. But I saw that shoplifters say they are caught on average just once every 49 times they steal.
Oh.
So that is not very often. At least I wouldn't think so. And then 79% of criminal justice professionals surveyed that, and they say that shoplifting is a gateway to more costly and violent crime. So almost like it would be like the gateway drug to crime of it might start small, but then if you get away with stealing candy, then you might feel emboldened to steal something bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it can get you into other things as well. And then finally, the last stat that I have is a third of teenagers who have been caught shoplifting say it's difficult for them to quit.
Wonder why that is.
Yeah. And like I said, I almost wonder if it's something of like, it can almost become an addiction. Like you get that thrill, that risk taking of I got away with something, and then you keep going, or you like the feeling of when you do it. And then it's very difficult to give up, even if you get caught.
Makes sense.
But I would like to at least hit on maybe what's behind this behavior, because I do think it's not always just like a teen looking for trouble. It could be, but it could also be other things. So it could be a need for attention, especially if they are stealing from you or a loved one. So if you have a teenager who's taking your things in your house or like at school, maybe they are trying to get attention. And that's a way of like, hey, you value this more than me, so I'm going to take it from you. And this
That
is
makes
mine
sense.
now.
Yeah.
It could also be expressing anger. Like I said, this one too, if you're stealing from a loved one or if something happened in a store that they feel like they were victimized, maybe they could steal out of anger
Mm-hmm.
to get back at that person. It could just be a lack of self-control.
Yeah.
It could be peer pressure. Maybe they're with a group of friends and that's what they all do. And so you feel like you have to do it. Maybe in that like kind of silly example, but like the Chili's hot pad, if everyone's doing it and they're like, come on, it's your turn, you have to do it, you might feel pressured to do that.
You don't have a hot pad on your gear shifter. I
Exactly.
feel like I'm being left out.
Exactly. It could also be the rebellion of like, I just don't, like, I'm going to act out in some way, and this is the way that I'm choosing to do it. Sometimes it could also be, I saw like a cry for help, especially if they feel like they lack control in their own life. So maybe they've been abused, maybe they are under extreme stress, and this is something that I can control.
Right.
Maybe they need money. So maybe they want something and don't have the money for it, or they're going to steal something and sell it to make money. So I see that sometimes. And then finally, maybe to get things that parents won't buy them or give them money for. So it could be name brand clothing. It could be alcohol. It could be vape pens, something that maybe they're underage or they're like, my parents won't let me do this, so I'm just going to take it from them. Or maybe they take the money, they steal the money and then use that to go buy the things that they want.
Well, you can really see how the reasons that people steal really dovetail with adolescence, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the need for attention, lack of self-control, peer pressure, rebellion, these risk-taking activities, would really be attractive for a teenager who is, coming of age. Then you throw on top of that being in some kind of need or hardship, and we talk about, and in our groups, we kids confess to stealing or being a part of that pretty often,
Mm-hmm.
where it's not surprising to us when or if they allude to it, maybe more so of like, or try to, this is a relatively common thing with teenagers, especially kids from hard places who don't have resources. This is a pretty easy go-to for them.
Yes, it is. Something I do want to mention, because it's something I saw as I was doing my research, is that kids who repeatedly steal might have trouble trusting others. They also might have trouble forming close relationships. And sometimes, instead of feeling guilty if they get caught, they blame the other person for their behavior. So, since they didn't give me what I want, I'm just going to take it, kind of example. And I did see in my research that it says like those kids who don't feel guilt, who don't feel remorse, and who are very much blaming probably should see a mental health professional. Of just kind of let's figure out what's behind this, because they're honestly, like I said, we just mentioned a bunch of things, but there could be something behind that is causing trust issues, that's causing them to act out in that way, and they might benefit from talking to someone.
Right.
So something to think about. I also want to mention kleptomania is something that I feel like we sometimes hear about, but this is a very rare compulsive disorder, and it makes up a very small percentage of shoplifting cases. But that would be like, I can't stop myself. I have to take things. But there is something to, like, if you have a child or know a teenager who, I mean, like, just literally cannot stop from stealing stuff all the time, there is a possibility that they have kleptomania, but that is a very small percentage. So don't let them just like blame it on that either.
Yeah, it's kind of in the cultural zeitgeist about kleptomania. You hear about that all the time, but it's probably good to know this is probably not the case. But it does happen.
Yes. So I kind of want to wrap up this topic by talking about like what are some things that we can do to help as adults. So first of all is maybe trying to figure out what's behind the stealing. Is it that they don't have money? Is it that they're mad about something? Are they trying to get attention? That is really key to figuring out then how to handle it if you know what's behind it. And so that would be my first step. But I also think it's important to talk about why stealing is wrong and the consequences.
Right.
because there can be some pretty big consequences. And we don't want to lecture necessarily, but even from a young age, if you have younger kids, like not letting them get away with stuff like that because it can turn into a bigger deal.
Absolutely.
I will say, like, if your student gets caught, or if you catch them that you find something at home that you're like, there's no way that they paid for that. How did they get that?
Mm-hmm.
Have them pay for or return the item to the store. Maybe even talk to the security team at the store if you feel like that is. But like, kind of follow up of like, hey, we're not just going to sweep this under the rug, but like, let's talk about what we can do to make it better, maybe.
I think especially if it's a small, you have something small, like
Yes.
pack of gum or whatever, like it's easy just to let that slide. But realizing that, no matter the size of it, it's, we don't steal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like I said, we don't want to lecture. We don't want to predict future bad behavior of if they stole one time, you're going to become a criminal and you're going to go down this path. And you don't want to assume that. You kind of also want to avoid saying things like, you're a thief, you're a bad person. Let's talk about the behavior and not put that on the child. So when you're talking to them, that's just some things to be aware of. But also, like, make it clear that it's a behavior that's not acceptable in your family. It's not acceptable in the community. It is not acceptable legally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and make sure that you're talking about that. And like I said, if your teen is not showing any remorse when you talk to them about it, then maybe it's like, okay, maybe we should talk to someone about this
Mm-hmm.
and get some help. And then finally, if you've talked about it, if you've addressed it, if there's been kind of a follow up on like, how can we make this better? Our advice is to drop it. And
Right.
let's begin again with a clean slate. And then you can have a different conversation if it comes up and it happens again. But I think it's important to not just continue to every time you see your teenager put that on them, because that's something that they're going to continue to be sneaky or hide it if they feel like I can't talk to mom or dad about this or a teacher about this because I'm just going to get lectured every single time.
Yeah, I think to that point, we just don't want. You said it once, but I want to really
Mm-hmm.
reiterate it that we want to divide out the offense from or the behavior from the identity, right? We
Yeah,
don't,
exactly.
especially with something like this, because early on, if they identify themselves as someone who steals, that that tends to stick
Mm-hmm.
emotionally. That I'm a thief, and bad things follow that. It is a gateway, and so after it has been addressed, I think dropping it and making sure you keep an eye, but you don't keep bringing it up over and over again, so they can move on from the mistake.
For the trend this week, Chris, we are coming up on summer. It's here,
It's
which
the best time.
seems, I know it seems wild. And we did a summer episode last summer, I believe.
Mm.
But I did just kind of want to give some summer ideas of what teens can do or what you as family, or maybe if you're just listening and you're a teacher and you're like, man, I've got all this time off for a counselor and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Maybe some of these ideas will be helpful for you too.
And having, I've got a preteen, will be technically a teenager in the fall, but some of the old ideas are falling by the wayside
Hmm,
of like how do you keep them busy, how do you keep them
right.
engaged, how do we stay off of video games, not off the TV for the whole summer. I
Hmm.
think this is super helpful to talk about this.
Yeah. So the first thing I have is learn something new.
Mm,
And the reason I mention this is because depending on what it is, this could take up a significant chunk of their summer
mm,
and give them something to do. So if you said like, hey, what is something you've always wanted to learn and you've never had time for it? Let's do it this summer.
mm-hmm,
Let's take lessons. Let's do a camp. Let's do guitar lessons. And like,
mm,
let's like kick something off, that's going to not only give them a goal, but also give them something to do throughout the week because they're going to need to practice that. Or maybe it's something like, hey, we're going to learn how to cook this summer.
mm-hmm.
And every week or every other day, we're going to come up with a recipe and I'm going to help you do it. And we're just really going to hone in on that and do something that they think is fun, but also is giving them a skill over the summer.
And there is, I mean, there's no reason that anyone can't do this. There's so many resources on the internet. I mean, it's just free. It's YouTube, something. And like my kids over a couple summers learn how to draw something. They'll Google how to draw a cat or whatever, and they'll just step by step. Literally, there's people who will teach you step by step how to draw something. There's a lot of fulfillment from that. So that's a really easy thing to do over the summer.
Now, also something new, maybe you eat something new. So use the summer as an opportunity to, whether you're traveling or just staying home, to say, let's try, every week we're going to try a new restaurant. And maybe within that, we're going to try a new type of food. Like we're going to get out of our norm and go, let's try to eat something new and see it. And you could rate it and make it, like have them, like, especially if you have a kid who likes charts and stuff like that, like have them make a chart and have them make a map, and then you can rank them and come up with a scale and kind of make it a little bit of a game over the summer.
I have a friend who does a version of this where they eat different kinds of Thai food. And I'm not huge on Thai food, but one of the things about Thai food is everywhere you go, they've got, basically a hotness scale from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, right? But they will rate them between restaurants, because a 3 at a certain restaurant is different than a 3 at a different restaurant.
Sure.
And so they go around and try to kind of figure out different hotness scales, and but just within a certain genre of food, especially if it's not American or something from around where you live, can be really, really fun.
Right. Even doing something like, our goal this summer is to find the best burger in our town or the best salsa in our town, and go, and every time you go, you're going to try one of the same thing. And I mean, I just think something like that would be fun. And it kind of gets them into like, all right, you've got to research it and plan it and help us figure out where we're going. Could give them something to look forward to. Now, getting a job or offering a service is also helpful, because it is something that will hopefully make them some money. It'll take up some time. It'll also get them off the couch or out of their video game chair, out of bed in the morning. So I will link, because I really do think we did an episode on summer jobs previously. So I'll link that, but just to hit some easy ones, that even age doesn't necessarily matter on this one. You don't have to be a driver or older to do these, but babysitting is big. People are always looking for people to watch their kids, mowing yards or doing any sort of yard work, lifeguarding, pet and house sitting. Lots of people are going out of town. So maybe you have a student that they go over and water the plants, or they go over and let the dogs out twice a day. Something like that is easy. And then I just love snow cone stands. Are like, that is a summer staple that's only open for the summer that you can encourage your teenager to work at. And then finally, I think part of the job of our teenagers, and you, honestly, for the summer is to relax.
Yeah.
To take some time. And so we're giving you ideas on things to do to get them moving, but at the same time, they deserve a break. Right. So maybe that's hanging out by the pool, being with family, reading a book, catching up on some shows, taking just time for self-care, and allow them the time to do that, because it is important for them to kind of recharge and get ready for the next school year.
Well, and I think with this too is understanding what is actual relaxation. And so, zoning out for 8 hours on a video game isn't really that. I mean, you have to be mindful of that. And I think it's good to, remind your students what actually does bring rejuvenation, what brings health. And so, we can play video games, or we can watch YouTube, or be on our phones, but we need to make sure that's not all we do. That's not the definition of relaxing. That is, that's checking out. And so, the act of relaxation, of just hanging out together, being with people, sharpening your mind, is really helpful. And making sure that you are able to define what's what, can help your student rejuvenate over the summer.
For our tip this week, I want to preview our upcoming series that is starting next week for this podcast, because it is going to be a little different. Usually in the summer, we kind of like to mix it up, but I'm excited about this one, Chris.
I am too. This is really exciting.
Yeah, so this summer we are going to kind of do a series on teen behaviors or stereotypes, maybe that you often hear about teenagers. But what's really cool is each episode, they're going to be a little shorter than normal. It's only going to be one of us. So it'll either be me, Chris, or Tobin, our program director, will be on them. But we're going to look at a behavior. Like, for example, next week we kick it off with perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to look at that behavior and we're going to look at what's behind it. We're going to give you questions to ask. We're going to give you some tips on how to connect with your teenager through that. And then we're even going to reframe it and maybe give a perspective change on that behavior, because some things aren't always all bad.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, these are stereotypes. So not every single teenager has these. And I think sometimes we blow them out of proportion, but we're going to look at things like anger and lying and gossip and drama and just these stereotypes that we often hear of teenagers and kind of break them down for you. And hopefully it's just a really cool way for you to get some resources and also start conversations with your teen.
And I think it's worth mentioning kind of the why behind this for us. When we train facilitators to go and run support groups, one of the sections of our training is what we call difficult group behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting. Every time we train on that, it feels like people lean in and start taking notes, because as adults working with students, it can be a little bit intimidating to deal with more problem behaviors. And so that kind of tipped us off, like people want to know about this. And so while this isn't to the extreme of which we talk about in our training, we do realize that people want to talk about this and I think more importantly want to do this better, right? We want to, when our student lies to us or is engaged with perfectionism or any of these things that can just be more difficult to deal with, we want to kind of begin with the end in mind, right? We want to be able to build that relationship. And so I'm really excited we are going to be able to do this summer. And these are shorter episodes. And so I know we're busy over the summer and there's a lot of things going on, but we really encourage you to check in on those as they drop every single week. And those will start next week. And we'd love to hear your feedback. And if you have ideas for more behaviors that we can catch up on past the summer, we'd love to hear that too. Mm-hmm. But with that, Karlie, we're going to wrap this episode up. We are so glad that you continue to listen and support the Teen Life Podcast. We ask that you subscribe if you haven't already. Click on the follow button on social media so you can catch up with all the things that we post on a daily basis. This episode, if you have a student who or know someone who has a student that's been stealing or can benefit from this, text this episode to a friend. Review us on your favorite podcast app. Give us 5 stars. Tell us why you love us. Tell people why you love us. That's how the word gets out. And with that, we will see you with our summer series next week.